Hello, and thank you all for joining us today on TARC Talk. Today we have some very important guests and talking about a very important portion of the travel industry, travel protection and travel insurance. My name is Steven. I am the founder and chief innovation officer over here at TARC, and we've got Kathy on here with us as well. She is our
Everyone.
business development manager, and we have two amazing reps from two incredible insurance companies. We have Tim from Allianz,
Hello.
and we have Carlos from TravelSafe.
Aye.
Perfect. Thank you guys. So just to kind of dive right in, for anyone in the travel industry, of course, for the last like 5 years or so, they pretty much understand the benefits of travel insurance. But for anyone that might be new to the industry, Tim, could you kind of take a minute or two and explain what makes insurance so important and really what is the difference between travel insurance and travel protection?
Yeah, well, that's great question, Stephen. Again, thank you for having both Carlos and myself on board. We represent different companies, but we all have the same focus. And why is it important to offer travel protection? And first of all, I don't call it travel insurance anymore. I call it trip protection and assistance, because when you call it travel insurance, a lot of people, when people hear insurance, they turn their ears off. But it's really important, and it's really a fundamental segment to add to every trip that you are booking for your client. It's an integral piece. It's something you should not go without offering trip protection, because without the offer, all advisors for the most part, I would imagine, cover E&O insurance, errors and emissions. And if you don't have the proof that you offered trip protection or travel insurance, whatever you want to call it, in some kind of acknowledgement that you offered it and they declined it, you can put yourself in some hot water, and you don't want to be there as an advisor. So, trip protection and assistance also really positions you, the advisor, to be the hero at the end of the day. People do file claims. Claims are paid out. Both Carlos and I know that. We see the claim dollars that go back out the door. So it does happen, as they say. And, if you don't offer trip protection, first of all, your client's going to go find it somewhere else, or they may go without it because you didn't offer it to them, and you can really get yourself in hot water by not offering. You got to make sure there's full disclosure, because as we know, every supplier has their terms and conditions where that money that your clients are depositing is going to go in penalty at some point in time. And and even worse than that is somebody's on a trip and they need assistance, especially medical assistance, and they don't have anyone to call. They don't. You don't want to be the one who gets blamed for not offering the opportunity to purchase something that could protect their trip investment and protect them while they're on their trip.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And for everybody that's watching live or any replays, we are going to be able to offer Tim and Carlos's email at the end as well. But if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We're happy to answer them as we go, or we may save some Q&A for the end. Carlos, same question to you, actually. What kind of differentiates the difference between travel protection and travel insurance? And what would you say is kind of the main importance for travel insurance?
So just building on what Tim already said, because I agree with everything that he said, I often make a joke of the fact that you want to move away from the word insurance. If I'm on a flight and I'm in a chatty mood and someone asks me what I do, I tell them I'm in the travel industry. If I want them to leave me alone, I tell them I'm in insurance. So it's just an example of the negative connotation. And we truly are more than insurance. That's the thing. The one distinction, what I build upon that Tim started with, is that there is a vast difference between third-party travel insurance, which is what Tim and I represent, and supplier insurance, which is what is offered by the airline, cruise line, tour operator. Now, not saying that those plans don't have value or a place in time, but they cannot offer the level of protection that our plans can for the really important things. Okay? So we want to do that. I can't emphasize enough the assistance portion of what we offer, because it literally means you have an expert one phone call away anywhere in the world that can guide you and help you. And it's going to help you avoid many of the pitfalls. Think of it this way. If you're going to go get something and you have no connections, you're going to get the rate rack. So you're going to get the most expensive. And this is especially true for foreign travel. So if you need medical assistance, God forbid you need an evacuation, you're going to get billed at the very highest level possible. But if you're working with us, we have assistance providers that handle all of that. And it's not like an HMO. It's not that you're limited in who you can use, but what they do is they choose the ones that not only can do it within the constraints of the policy, but can do it in the best manner. Remember, being evacuated isn't the whole thing. That's only the transportation part of it. Where's the evacuation going? Is it going to the best medical care in the area? Both of our companies have learned over decades of experience that it's cheaper for us to get your client the best medical attention as quickly as possible. So it actually works in their benefit. So the other thing that Tim mentioned over and over again is you're not selling this. You're offering it. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with the offer. You know, the U.S. Postal Service isn't always renowned for everything they do. But if you go into a post office to mail anything, they're going to ask you, would you like some stamps? Would you like to send this, in a higher class? They're making the offer. That's all you have to do. Make the offer. Get into the habit of making the offer every time and make it right in the planning stage. When they ask for a quote, tell them you're going to include the amount of the insurance, estimated insurance, or travel protection within that. Don't leave it for when they're actually making the deposit.
That's right. The earlier the better, because without an early purchase of the travel protection, you don't have any protection, right? You have nothing. You him and haw. You think about it. Most plans that are out there are based on age at the time of purchase. So yeah, you can wait until later if you want, but when you start waiting till later, you start losing some key benefits. But you also have you maybe charge more for something you could have bought much less expensive if you just would have bought it right at the time of the booking of the trip. Okay. But, advisors should never feel that they're selling their client anything. Like Carlos was mentioning, they're not insurance agents and we don't want them to be insurance agents, right? Advisors' role is to sell, the trip, the experience of the trip. It's you're offering. I heard a line from a advisor many years ago, and I don't know if he's still in the business, but if he is, I thank him because I use it quite often. It's a line that simply says, and you would be wise to take trip protection and assistance. This way you open the door to not just a no. Well, of course I'm wise. Tell me more. Where if you said, do you want travel protection? And believe me, Carlos and I have heard a lot of different pitches out there. Do you need travel insurance? Do you want travel insurance? Well, no one wants to buy anything extra. And because they always think if you say insurance, oh, I have so much insurance, I'm insurance poor, somebody's going to cover me, so a lot of consumers assume that they have some other protection that will take care of their loss. So again, you're not a seller of insurance. You are there to offer and highly recommend the trip protection purchase.
So Tim, with that point, I know that insurance is afterthought for many clients. How can advisors shift the mindset of clients so it's essential rather than an option?
Yeah, absolutely. During the beginning of 2020, when COVID reared its ugly head, a lot of suppliers and destinations required you had proof of, and there's still destinations that require you have proof of travel medical insurance. Our passports, all of us own a passport, page 6 of our passport, issued by the U.S. government, basically stamps in there and says, hey, listen, if you're traveling overseas, Medicare does not travel with you. You better have some kind of travel medical insurance. And, it's stamped right there. So a lot of people assume that they have something else that is covering them for their trip, but it shouldn't be an afterthought. The smart traveler out there understands the value of the trip protection because either it happened to them or it happened to somebody they knew. And, I have some advisors that use some pretty crafty, messaging out to their clients, some that I can't really endorse, but, there's one guy who sends out a video of an air ambulance, basketing somebody off a cruise ship. It's like, that's not cheap, it's like, but, when it comes to medical, it's timing's of the essence when it's medical, right? wait to choose which hospital you're going to get yourself checked into. Carlos and I, our companies kind of work the same way, where we have a network of different providers that we know when we're contacted, our assistance team, we're going to whisk those people off of that cruise ship or wait for them at the next port of call with an ambulance that's going to take them away to the nearest appropriate facility that's been, checked to make sure they are who they say they are, so we could get the client the proper need as quickly as possible. And we always remind people, travel insurance is 911 globally. It's global 911, which means that we are just a phone call away from assisting you out of harm's way. And the worst thing that could happen to somebody is the medical while they're on the trip. That's the biggest value of the travel insurance plans out there.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't want to get ahead of the questions, but what often happens is we see, and Tim and I have been doing this for a long time, we see general progression with agents. When a new agent comes on, they're just trying to build up their clientele. They're trying to get more knowledgeable about, what they can offer travel-wise. And if they're offering any protection at all, they're just offering whatever the supplier has. That's a good first step, but it's not really what travel advisors do. I mean, if you're selling nothing but what the supplier offers, what's to prevent your client from just going straight to the supplier next time, right? Good agents, professional agents, are bundling different services. They're bringing to the table something that their client doesn't have the expertise or knowledge to give. And when they bring third-party travel insurance like ours, travel protection, what they're doing is they're giving them something better than what they would normally reach for themselves. So it's many will say, oh, but like Tim said, oh, I don't want to be an insurance agent. Insurance isn't my thing. Travel's my thing. It's not. The focus isn't our product as you focusing on offering it and selling it. It's our product helping you sell your primary product, which is travel. Too many consumers are, if they know anything about travel insurance or travel protection, they think it's just medical trip cancellation before the trip. They don't even think about the fact that during their trip, what could happen could be magnitudes more expensive than what they paid for their trip. I mean, trip cancellation, your loss is limited to what you already spent. But something that happens on the trip can cost far, far more. And there are endless numbers of people that unfortunately are misinformed and think they're covered by their medical plan. Most people don't have foreign medical coverage. If they do, it's very small, and you got to bear all the costs before and then get reimbursed. That's fine if it's an $800 bill, but not if it's a $40,000 bill. So there's that. There's the fact that they think they're covered by their credit card. That's probably the one that more advisors hear more often than not. And there are a couple of credit cards. If they're packing a black American Express Centurion card, sure, there's a decent plan in there. But everything else, platinum, it will come up very short if they have a true travel emergency.
Yeah, the big shortage in credit card coverage is, except for that black card, they're not going to offer any type of medical plan, any kind of medical benefit while the client is traveling. So, those are the big holes in their product. The old saying goes, if it's free, it must not be worth much. Well, that's true in that, right? In that essence with the credit card coverage, because they can't afford a medical transportation. We both have products that will cover up to $1 million in emergency medical transportation. Those credit card companies aren't willing to shell out that kind of dough, just because they're using that piece of plastic to buy their trip. So in emergency medical itself is a $50,000 or $100,000 benefit in third-party plans. But the typical, supplier insurance, that's a limited coverage, 10,000, maybe 25,000. That's not going too far these days, right? That kind of money. Like everything else, travel's gotten more expensive. So has the cost to get somebody helped and assisted and treated and released without having to worry about that huge bill.
Yeah, no, and I think that's great. And I do want to actually kind of circle back to something here that I hear you guys keep saying. So you keep saying, just for clarification purposes, I've been working with you guys for many, many years. We've always had those clients that are like, you know what, I'm going on this trip no matter what. It doesn't matter what happens. I don't need to worry about the coverage of the finance, blah, 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 so on and so forth. What you guys keep talking about, though, is third-party coverage. By that, I know you mean not working with the supplier. However, there's also a huge difference between secondary and primary coverage. So, Carlos, could you briefly talk about the difference between that and what that looks like for clients and even for us as advisors?
Absolutely. So just a little bit of background, TravelSafe since like 2012, we had offered only primary plans. We now have secondary offerings because we are independent. We use more than one carrier. One of the carriers that we use is Nationwide. Nationwide writes secondary products. The biggest hesitation we had to taking on a secondary was the medical advance payment for hospitalization. So in our case, our secondary plans actually have that. There is an advance payment guarantee for hospitalization, even on our secondary plans. But secondary does have a function. If you ask me which one's better, I'd say primary, but sometimes primary is overkill. If you're taking a domestic US trip, medical isn't as big an issue, but secondary can fill the gaps. And that primary is more of a convenience thing in that you don't have to file with multiple carriers. One of the questions we get the most often about our secondary is, well, my client's over 65 on Medicare, are they going to have to file with Medicare for a medical event that's international? We tell them no. It's already known that Medicare doesn't cover it. So we don't even require them to file with Medicare first. But the secondary, and even secondary, and this is something that's really not very well known. Because insurance is regulated at the state level, even our secondary product has 13 states where it's actually primary, because those states will not allow a secondary medical to be sold. So even our secondary sometimes has primary coverage. It just depends on the state of residence of the person who's buying it. But in general, primary, for convenience, for how quickly the claim can be processed, tends to be superior, but there's a cost to it. And secondary, in the right circumstances, can step in and certainly help out with that by bringing down the price and making it appropriate to their level of travel. Again, these are things that an agent can offer to the client that a client would never know.
Right. Right. No, again, like Carlos's product, our products at Allianz are primary. We do have some alternative products that are secondary. Those are just our annual plans. But even the annual plans with the secondary medical, there's still about those 13 same states that require us to be primary. And it both, no matter if you're Allianz or TravelSafe, we have to comply with each state. Each state has their own Department of Insurance, which regulates and tells us what we need to do, how we need to fall in line with what they're asking our products to do for them. But yeah, definitely, Carlos sometimes use terminology that's above my head, but when he's saying you don't have to worry about other carriers, he's not talking about other airlines. He's talking about other insurance products that they may have, policies that they may have. So the beauty of the primary product is that, first of all, we're gonna guarantee payment when they need to be hospital, air ambulance or air transported or in medically, admitted into a hospital. We're gonna guarantee that up front for them with our policies, whether it's primary or secondary. But when they return back home, it's, with the primary product, you don't have to worry about following through your own private insurance. It just speeds up the claim payments because we are first payee. Now, if they have another insurance provider, as Carlos likes to call it, a carrier, we will subrogate with behind the scenes, but it won't slow down the claim payment to the ultimate end user, which is a policyholder. So yeah, primary and secondary are both out there, but whether primary or secondary, we do as long as we're contacted with it. It's very important. Advisors always remind your client, bon voyage, have a great time. If anything goes wrong, contact Allianz during your trip or contact TravelSafe if you go that route. Contact us during the trip so we could render the assistance they purchased. Right. And also we help keep their credit card in their wallet or purse, which is most important. And probably even more important to that is that we get them to the proper medical facility where they may be traveling to or through. So don't end up in some, mass unit and we're not used to mesh units in the US. We want to make sure they go into a clean hospital with technologies and preferably English speaking doctors and nurses. But, that's not the last, because we do speak 70 different languages with Allianz, so we'll help them through, those needs. And we'll also, send a private nurse to be by their bedside if somebody's traveling and they don't speak the language with whatever country they're in. So we will always be there to assist, but it all starts with communication. It's a duty of the travel advisor to remind their clients before they leave, contact Allianz, make sure they download our mobile app. It's really easy download, so they can get in contact with our assistance team while they're traveling. That's very critical.
And that's really important what Tim just said, because one of the common mistakes we see too often is people who need assistance on their trip are contacting the claims department.
Mm-hmm.
You're not doing a claim right now. What you need is assistance. So contact the assistance department. The claim will come later. We'll take care of the claim, but the assistance is what you need now, and that's expert assistance. That's that, like Tim. I love that term Tim used, 911 Global. It is that.
No charge, Carlos.
Yeah, thanks. I won't charge for the stuff you use.
Believe it or not, we used to work together. We've known each other for many years now.
So here's the thing. Also, people think of evacuation, and the images they think of is like Tim just mentioned. One of his clients sends a air ambulance evacuation, or being hoisted in by bassinet up into a helicopter. Those things happen. They happen monthly, if not weekly, all over the world. But an evacuation can be something as simple as moving someone who had, you're in a car wreck. You're not deciding what medical facility you're being taken to, but then they get to there and they get treated. Assistance gets pulled in, determines that's not the best hospital in the area. They want to move them across town. Dealing with family is always the hardest. I've had a family member say to me, "Oh, I don't need to buy your product because I'm going to a socialized country." There's a difference between public and private hospitals in socialized countries. And not all socialized countries will let you get treatment for free. That's reserved for their citizens. So there is always a reason to have it. And costs can spiral. We just had to go to Costa Rica on a family emergency. My youngest, just before we left, I got everybody a plan. They stayed a little bit longer. She basically got Montezuma's revenge. Ended up having to go, dehydration, went to basically an outpatient type thing. It was $500 between the treatment, the transportation, the medication. Just that was $500. And that's far from being a serious issue. And people think, "Oh, why am I going to get in a car accident? I'm not even driving."
Right.
You're riding in a taxi or an Uber.
I think no one sees that, or foresee that, or hope, obviously, right? But it's true. And I just have a two-part question, because on top of that, you said the difference is what about credit card? A lot of clients would be saying, "Oh, my credit card provides travel insurance." What are the key differences, now that you've mentioned what it would be when there is an accident or anything like that, between?
I'm going to step in and follow me. Here's the thing.
Go right ahead, Carlos.
Let's say the credit card covers it. Okay. Let's say the credit card covers it. You know what that means? That means it's going against their line of credit. That means you come home with $20,000, $30,000 on your credit card. If that claim's not filed and completed within 30 days, who's going to pay the additional interest on that? Who's going to pay? You're going to have to carry that load until the claim is finalized. And what if it turns out that, yes, they thought they could cover it, but a portion of it's denied? These are the types of things that don't happen with both Tim and I, in that we do that guarantee of payment so someone can get admitted, treated, and released. And keep in mind, where people, and Americans are the worst at this, people don't realize there are many places throughout, and it's not just the Caribbean and Mexico, but the Caribbean and Mexico are notorious for it. You can be turned away from a hospital.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They won't even admit you because you can't prove you can pay up front.
Yeah. You
Or
must
they
pay in front. In a place called Mexico, you must show guarantee. You must pay before you get in the door. So that's difficult. We've heard many stories between the two of us. Many stories, people being turned away from the top-rated hospitals in some countries, and they end up down the street. Hey, good luck. We need 25 grand for you to get checked in, but we don't have it. Hey, good luck. There's one down the street that might take you for 10. It's like, well, who has 10? It's like, but we take the guesswork out of it. It's by contacting us. We're going to get you admitted into that hospital without even proof of payment. It's our it's our guarantee of payment that we put in place for them. But again, that's only with communication. If a client just goes to the hospital in Mexico and say, "Oh, I got Allianz, and they're going to take care of me." No. You make sure your clients are contacted us before you go to the hospital in Mexico, because there's some places in these countries that we want you to stay away from. One hospital is not the same as the next, and we get feet on the ground on a global basis that go and check and vet these hospitals to make sure they are who they say they are. We just don't believe in their marketing efforts. We want to see what they're doing in these hospitals. And Carlos mentioned something about his youngest child got sick. How many times I've heard from advisors say, "Well, we need to insure grandma because she's elderly." It was like, well, what about the rest of the family? It's not always the senior traveler who's going to cause the loss, whether it's a trip cancellation or a trip interruption or a trip to emergency center. It's not always a senior traveler that only needs and only files claims. It could be the youngest child in that family tree that caused that family not to go on that family vacation of the family reunion. We've seen it. The 3-year-old contracts an ear infection. Now the whole family's not going because little Sally can't go. And that's something we would protect. And so it's you got to get out of the mindset. That it could happen to anyone at any time. And again, as far as an advisor goes, just do your due diligence. Listen for clues for your clients. But, people say, "I don't need it, I'm not going to use it." Well, how do you know? It's like we call those people Superman complex. The ones that are saying, "I'm going no matter what." So somebody who says that is basically saying, if I was an advisor, I say, "Well, listen, Stephen, I know you and I know your parents and I know your grandparents and I know you have 15 siblings. What if something happens to them? Would you still go on that trip?" Well, no, in that case, I wouldn't. Well, you know what? Suppliers have their penalties. They have their terms and conditions. And as an advisor, I would be reminding my client, is like, I don't hold your money. I already passed it through to the cruise line, to the tour operator. I can't get it back for you, but just do yourself a favor. Insurance is one of those things. It's great to have when you need it, but if you don't have it, then you're out that trip cost, which again, some people could afford maybe to lose their $5,000. They already determined that. But Carlos mentioned earlier, it's the post-departure benefits that one should be worried about. It's the medical things. Baggage, yes, they go damaged, broken, and that's good to get a new suitcase reimbursed, sent to you, or be able to rebuild it. But it's the medical things that could cost you a boatload of money if you're on your own.
Perfect. Yeah, I appreciate all of that. We're actually seeing in the comments, Christy mentioned that she does predominantly use third-party insurance just because of the during trip assistance and all of that. And then you kind of covered how to basically make people understand before the trip that even though they say they don't need it, why they actually do. And to be honest with you, we all have those stories. We all have XYZ happen, so on and so forth. I also saw that Amy posted that the medical advance payment is everything. She actually had a client that had a $7,000 bill and didn't have to come out of pocket for anything. But before we get to Linda's question, I do want to circle back, Carlos, really quick about something that you talked about. You mentioned an annual plan. Getting away from the client side of things for a second and looking at the advisor side of things, or even the client side, because I know annual plans are also available for clients as well. What is the major benefit for travel advisors or clients who travel all the time? They just want to pay one-time benefit. Realistically, it's sometimes cheaper than purchasing 2 plans throughout the entire course of the year. What is the benefit to advisors and or clients for having that annual trip policy?
Thanks, Stephen. So we were very hesitant to offer annual to consumers. We had previously had agent plans. And any new agent who is, when agents come into the business, one of the first things they do, and rightfully so, is they start taking as many fam trips as they can so that they can get familiar with the product and go out and offer it to their clients, sell it to their clients. So if you're taking more than 3 or 4 trips a year, an annual plan, for the agent is a great idea. Why were we hesitant to offer it to consumers? Because we're not sure that they really understand it. We are offering, ours can be offered to consumers now, is that the trip cancellation and trip interruption benefits are fixed. So you only have so much for the entire year. And when we talk about a year, it's always 364 days, not 365. Yes, we know how to count. We just can't do 365 because that makes it a major medical plan and it has to meet a whole different set of conditions. So it's always 364 days. Now, here's the really positive thing about these plans. They tend to cover you anytime you travel a certain number of miles from home on a trip that's no more than 30 days. I think Tim and I both have the same or similar condition. Ours is 100 miles from home. I'm not sure how Tim's works, but you're covered on everything. So I live in Orlando. Every time I go to Miami to see my family, I'm already under coverage. And that's a driving trip. It's not an official trip. And you don't register the trips. Okay, you're able to go on the trips with our product. I can't speak for anybody else. But these are the positives. Now, one of the things is that let's say you take 8 trips a year that are under $3,000 and 1 trip a year that's over $8,000. We have a $3,000, $5,000, and $7,500 plan. I would never tell you to take the $7,500. I would tell you to take the $3,000 one to cover all your little trips. And then on your big trip, just buy a regular policy. And that way you're able to cover it, and that would maximize the use. Now for clients, yes, they can use it, but here's the key. One thing that everybody needs to be careful with. Most annual plans do not have a pre-existing waiver. And so you have to look at the look back period, okay? Because if something is excluded at the initial purchase, it's basically excluded for the entire year. So that's where the caution is. And so you want to look at that. One thing I want to go back to that we didn't fully address, Tim talked about the Superman complex and canceling because of family. I don't think most people realize our definition of family. And in this, Allianz and TravelSafe are identical. We don't just cover mom, dad, grandparents, children. We cover aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, in-laws, step relations, any type of living condition where you have the same address as someone else. All of those are covered.
Yeah, the only part of the family is not covered, and I think it's the same with Carlos's product, are cousins, because there's just too many facets of cousins. I have over 150 cousins. None of them, I don't live nearby any of them, so none of them will really cause me to cancel my trip. But, in insurance, if you add more coverage and add, more bells and whistles, it does tend to increase the premium, and no one wants to increase the premium based on that. Sorry, Carlos, I cut you off, but
No, I was done, and that's a valid point.
Okay. Yeah. So annual plans, when we created annual plans many moons ago, our first annual plan that we created was called Annual Executive. And they were more in mind for business travelers, those who have reasonably low trip costs. Because as Carlos mentioned, the annual plans, where people don't want to understand is that both the trip cancellation and trip interruption is an annualized dollar amount. So if you buy the Annual Executive 5,000 coverage, you only have 5,000 in trip cancellation and 5,000 in trip interruption. So when you file against that policy, say your first trip was $4,000, it is paid as a payable claim. You only have $1,000 left for the remainder of the year for all those trips you may have purchased. You could definitely buy a single trip, a policy to cover the remainder of the individual trips you take. But the annual plans, they're out there again. They were built for business travelers. We do have one called an annual family plan. That's called the Premier Plan. They have excellent post-departure benefits, the medical transportation. But again, they are secondary in nature, except for the 13 states that require us to be primary. But it does become a cost saver for the senior traveler, especially because they're not based on age. And age is one of the parameters on how the per trip plans are based are the age of the client at the time of purchase. So these are non-age rated plans, which really don't make sense sometimes for the younger traveler, because younger people should be paying less, right? So when you have a non-age rated product, the 8-year-old pays as much as an 88-year-old, and the 8-year-old should be paying much less than that. Okay, but the annual plans are out there. I always get questions. I'll do trainings and I'll talk about all the per trip plans. And the first question out of the advisor's mouth is, "Do you have annual plans?" So you really got to put some onus on your clients. I know a lot of advisors handhold their clients, but you got to keep an eye on how many claims they're filing, and you got to remind them, "Listen, Carlos, you don't have any benefit left for any more of your trips for cancellation. Do you want to take that on as an advisor?" I always say, don't come out offering, saying we have annual plans, guns a-blazing, but if they ask you for it, know that you have it with Allianz, and you know that you do have an option with TravelSafe as well. Okay, so that's my words of wisdom on those.
No, I appreciate it. So I'm going to circle back really quick back to Linda's other question because I actually just had a very similar unfortunate situation like this. I had a client that was on X cruise line and they had an issue and they ended up walking off X cruise line with a $4,500 bill that is now attached to their credit card. How does the advance payment approach work with you guys when it comes to a cruise ship when something is done on board?
Yeah.
Tim, if you want to take that one first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that question. Unfortunately, the cruise lines do not take our guarantee of payment. So yes, you'll have to, be charged the credit card to get off it. I don't know if all cruise lines do that, or they just send you a promissory note that you'll pay it at some time in the future. But those who are incurring that high medical of being in that infirmary on the cruise ship, it's not cheap, as we all know. Just make sure you file as soon as you get home. Keep the documentation that you were in there and what treatment you received. So we could turn. I mean, most of our claims are paid within 7 to 10 day turnaround period, as long as we get all the proper documentation. So it's a quick turnaround. So we could have that thing paid before it even hits your credit card. Because I'm sure the cruise lines, not everyone carries that high limit on their credit cards to pay that incurred expense. You said $4,500. I've seen people billed for $45,000 because they were in their emergency unit for 2 days. I mean, my gosh, it's like so. Yeah, that's a drawback. On board a cruise ship, yeah, they just don't take our guarantee of payment.
So
at this time, but we are working on it. So
well, so the thing is that it's insurance, right? So we are limited by the language and the filings. And you'll notice that in both of ours, what we offer is an advance payment guarantee for hospitalization. A cruise ship does not have a hospital. They have an infirmary. That's why the advance payment guarantee doesn't apply to a cruise ship. And yes, the cruise lines will make you settle your bill before you exit. Now, there are endless stories, and unfortunately, I hate to bang on them, but the truth is that the staff on that cruise, especially the senior staff, the captain and those, they have a schedule to keep. And they do. That is their primary objective.
mm-hmm.
And we have heard endless stories of people, they think you have something, they're aiming to get you off the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And people who have been left at the end of the pier and the ship sailing away, and there's no one there to take care of them. They got to figure it out themselves. And just recently, there was a news piece, an article about a guy who got the flu.
Oh,
He
yeah.
went to the infirmary and he ended up with a $45,000 bill. So,
Yeah.
and he had bought an insurance policy, but it was a low-end insurance policy with only $20,000 worth of medical. So he's carrying this $45,000 bill until he can get everything settled. And even when he gets it settled, he's still going to have an additional $25,000 on top of, that. These are the type of costs that can incur. And inflation, as Tim said, has affected everyone. I remember there was a time when we could do evacuations from the Caribbean for $15,000 to $18,000, which isn't peanuts, right? But now those $15,000, $18,000 evacuations are costing $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. So that is why you want the higher levels. And anything can happen on a trip. We both have $1 million evacuation plans with $1 million evacuation benefits. I had a travel agent tell me a story where I'm not even sure that would have covered it because she almost got taken off of a cruise ship onto a U.S. nuclear submarine because they thought she had appendicitis and they were in the middle of the ocean. And the nuclear submarine was the only one that answered the Mayday.
Wow. Wow.
Right?
Yeah. Well, like Carlos mentioned, it's, and we both mentioned earlier is that, part of the plan that they purchased is assistance. And again, part of that, hey, bon voyage, you're going to have a great time, Stephen. But if something goes wrong on your trip, contact us during the trip, especially if it's medically related. Especially, before that, they want to let you off that next pier
Right.
because we want to be there for you with an ambulance to whisk you away instead of you being left off and trying to figure out what to do. So contact us during your trip, but especially if you're being let off at a cruise line, like Carlos said, that ship needs to stay on schedule. And they will do everything they can. And they know they cannot operate on somebody because they don't have the technology to do so. But, so your client, they're in the infirmary. A lot of them like to reach out to the advisor. What do I do? What do I do? It's like contact Allianz, so we could talk it through. We have medical personnel on our staff, doctors and nurses that will talk about the symptoms. What's going on? Can we wait for another day and a half to the next protocol? Or do we need to send an air ambulance out to get you off that cruise ship? But make sure they understand this is what they bought. This is part of what they bought. And I always say the most important part of the plan from Allianz and Carlos's too are the post-departure benefits, the medical benefits, the medical transportation benefits. Those are the things you want to really hit home on with your clients, not to scare them out of taking a trip, but just so they understand that it does happen. It does happen.
And everybody in our industry is focused on your clients taking the trip. That you've invested weeks, maybe months planning for them, arranging for them, so that they take the trip, they enjoy it, and they come back to you for more trips, right?
Right.
So trip cancellation, hopefully they didn't go into severe debt just paying for that trip. But in essence, they can afford that. Evacuation, I talked about it before. Evacuation includes that ambulance. The pier to the hospital. And again, it's not just the nearest hospital. If assistance is involved, they're going to be taken to the best medical facility we can find. Why? Right. Because it's cheaper for us. So they don't have to count on us being, the good guys, because that can be hard to argue. But here's the thing. We are different. I've always referred to us as insurance light. We are different from any other type of insurance.
So true. What about, like, I know time and time, and you guys said, if they have something, they need to claim it right away when they get back. So what's your opinion on this? Should advisors help clients with the claims process, or what do you guys typically recommend?
Yeah, we recommend the advisors staying out of it.
Okay.
And the only reason I say that is because it'll slow down their day, right?
We like that. We like that.
Now, of course, you're going to have those situations where you have clients that might be a little senior and they just don't know how to file a claim. They don't want to. They want to rely it all on you. So you're going to have those situations. You're going to deal with those accordingly. But we want you to stay out of it. We want to be communications for them, for your client directly, and we will help them out as well. But some things you will have to provide to them, just documentation. The trip invoice and the trip cancellation invoice, or the trip, what the penalties may be. Those are kind of things that you could help them out with. But I want to get involved with starting the claim from the onset. Yeah. And we do recommend, with Allianz, we do recommend that they start their claim within 90 days of their return. And why we say that is because we don't want people to just, put it on the backlog and start losing key documentation that they're going to need. So we want to we want to really stress the urgency to file the claim as soon as the loss occurs. In fact, part of our plans are that once you realize that for trip cancellation, if you're being advised by a doctor after a consultation that you cannot travel on your scheduled trip in 3 months, they need to cancel that trip within 72-hour period, and not just say, oh, that doctor's a quack that doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm going to wait. I'm not going for 3 more months. And then 3 more months comes, you're now in 100% penalty, and you're going to have that full 100% loss. So we say, cancel when you're advised. We'll pay the claim, whatever level it's at, the payable claims. But we just, the traveler is not the risk taker here. The insurance companies are the risk takers, right? And we all have our terms and conditions that if you're advised to cancel, and we'll pay the claim accordingly at the time the loss occurred.
Perfect. And yeah, like Kathy said, the more we can stay out of it, the better. I know we have to send over invoices and everything else and supplier confirmations and all that kind of stuff, but the better out we are, the better.
Yeah.
And I saw Amy sent over a message too. She wants to know, this is actually a good question here. Is there ever a time when an insurance company deems a traveler non-insurable because of multiple claims? Carlos, is that something you've ever seen where you guys won't cover a certain traveler because they've already filed 10 claims with you guys or something?
No, the annual plans do have some restrictions, but I mean, it would literally have to be like more than 10 claims in a year. Okay. So there's a little bit of restriction on the annual plan, but on our regular plans, no. The only thing that can't be done is they can't have multiple plans covering the same trip.
Okay.
Right.
And again, always keep in mind we are gap insurance, which gap insurance means loss. You have to prove that you suffered a loss, and we cover the loss to make you whole, right? So if you can't, you know, Tim was saying about the documentation and things like that. You want to file sooner than later because documentation disappears. I joke that we're the only industry around that has the answer to if a tree fell in the forest and no one saw it or heard it, did it fall? No, it didn't fall. There's no documentation. It
That's
fell.
right. No picture. Yeah.
Want that documentation, and I think that's the one area agents can assist their clients in, is just trying to help them make sure that they have all the documentation the first time they file. Because like Tim said, if they have everything when they file initially, the claim can proceed very quickly. Remember, a claim is nothing but a story, nonfiction story. Okay. And if the documentation backs up the story, everything goes smoothly. It's when those two differ that you start to get complications. And if they don't have all the documentation, what's going to happen? They're going to submit it. Then, I mean, we deal claims processing. We pay out on claims. That means we take them in a high volume, right? So it means it's not going to be looked at immediately. So now it takes 5 days for somebody to look at it and say, oh, it's missing. And they got to go back. Then there's the time that your client takes to get it back to them. So we don't want to delay it. We want to try and make sure they have all the documentation first time.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Absolutely. And we're the same way, you know, we also say, you know, you want to file, you know, contact us to set up the claim number, the claim case, you know, so we know what's going on. But until until you gather all the documents that are told for you to gather for this trip cancellation claim, don't send anything in. Don't send in pieces parts, because all it does is drags things along. And the new claims agent would need to look at it. Okay, still missing so and so and so. Sending out another email. Just wait till you get all the gathered information, but file with us right away. Get the claim number, and then start collecting all the nuts that you need to do to send in. But we, back to Amy's question, we don't blackball anyone from buying a future plan with us if they cancel over and over again. We did have a situation years ago where a gentleman canceled a trip 7 times over, different trips 7 times over, at 100% penalty. And this was years ago, but we finally reached out to him and said, sir, we're sorry that you had to cancel your trip once again. Could you tell us what's going on with you? He goes, yeah, gosh darn it. He goes, this damn doctor won't let me out of the hospital to go on these trips. So the guy who was never able to travel. So that's part of, earning the coverage for pre-existing medical conditions, is that you have to be medically able to travel on the day you buy the insurance. So that's one clause we added in years ago, because that was a loophole, because we don't blackball anyone, and unlike, that air ambulance company MedJet, we don't ask for somebody to send us an application to buy our policy. It's just, you process the information we ask for, you pay the amount due, and we issue coverage. We issue you benefits.
The only exception, and this would hold true for everyone in the industry, is if there's fraud.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only exception. And if it's fraud, then there's an issue.
Right.
Now, those are all good points about claims, the whole 9 yards. How about selling wise, right? So are there specific words or phrases that advisors should avoid when discussing travel
we all
protection?
get those beautiful what if questions and scenarios.
Yeah.
But
What do
Yeah.
you
again,
think about that?
they're not selling, they're offering.
Right, offering. Remember, you're offering. You're not selling. Oh, I need you to sell you insurance. No, you don't. Don't use the word sell, because then your customer, your client, thinks that you're an insurance agent, and you're not. You're a travel advisor, and you're offering. It's a good idea that you buy trip protection and assistance. Why? Well, to protect your trip investment against cancellation needs, or for assistance if you need to interrupt your trip. The policy is going to put the money back in your pocket. If you have a 10-day trip and on day 2 you have to cancel, interrupt your trip because something happened to you or something happened to a loved one, a non-traveling family member that you need to get back home to immediately, we're going to put that money back in your pocket for that trip, the 8 days that you didn't experience a good time on, that you paid for, that the supplier's not going to give you back the money, right? So we're going to put that money back in your pocket, plus that same day airline ticket. Most all of our plans include 150% trip interruption benefit. That's 150% of the amount insured, because we know that same day airline ticket's not going to be cheap to get you back home due to a covered reason. Now, you always got to point out, I always remind advisors, don't paint the sky so blue to set us both up to fail, right? Because like every other insurance plan in the world, there are terms and conditions, there are exclusions. We want everyone to understand that, and we want them to read the certificate of insurance that is sent out to them. But that's a 45 to 90-page document that we send out upon purchase. And we want to remind advisors to always make sure that when we ask, like when we're sending that, we call it the fulfillment, we make sure you put your client's email address in that field so that it goes directly to your client. You can get a copy yourself if you want one, but we need to get that in the hands of the client because they have a 15-day free to look period where if they want to read it over, and again, it's not up to the advisor to read that 47 to 90-page document to your client. You need to put the onus on your client to understand what's included and what's not. And not everything's included, because there aren't any insurance companies that don't have exclusions. We can't, if we had a all risk type of plan out there, no one would ever buy it because it would be so expensive, right?
That makes
We
sense.
cover the most common things that happen.
Yeah, I mean, people will often say, well, can you insure this? Can you insure that? We can insure anything. Are you willing to pay the cost? So that's the question, because insurance in and of itself is simply a transfer of risk for a set premium, right? Now, adding on to what Tim was saying, Kathy, we would actually throw it back to you all. You're a community of agents. You should be working with each other to see who's using. Amy Leone is a very successful agent who offers travel protection all the time. I know that she has certain things that she does, but I will tell you that for the beginning agent, here are some things, and they can be seasonal and they can be macro. Seasonal, wave season. You're selling for summer, heavy Caribbean. That's hurricane season, baby. So find a third party that has hurricane coverage as a covered reason for trip cancellation. The macro thing is, there are even articles coming out, things that used to be refundable no longer are. Now they're asking you to prepay for rental cars, and if you cancel, you lose. European hotels, you used to be able to book them, and if you couldn't make it, you only got charged the first night. Now they charge you for the whole 6 nights. So a lot of things are getting harder and harder to get back. And remember that in both of our cases versus the supplier type coverages, right? You file a claim for a covered reason, you're getting cash. You're not going to get back a voucher or a credit that locks you into that one company for that future trip. Let's say you were taking an Alaskan cruise. You couldn't make it, a medical thing happened, a family thing happened, you have to cancel. Do you really want to wait a year for the Alaskan cruise season that you wanted to come around again? Or are you going to substitute that with a different trip? Go to Africa, go to Europe, go somewhere else. You can do that with our plans. You can't do that necessarily with the supplier plan.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense. And I know working with you guys, I mean, that's kind of the benefit of having people like you, people in our back pockets. We are not credit card companies. We are not, I mean, we're travel advisors at the end of the day. What that means is we have relationships with preferred partners. We reach out to you guys because you have, you have the knowledge, you have the experience and the expertise. I can't tell you how many times I've sent you guys emails and I'm just like, hey guys, I need XYZ. what should I do here? And you're great about that. But I'm curious from a partnership perspective, what else can travel advisors do other than just reaching out to you for education? Is there anything that you guys do regarding co-marketing? Like what makes a preferred supplier under the insurance umbrella?
So in our
Yeah, so yeah, we have different you know, you go to travel agent academy, you know, there's a lot of training seminars that we have that are pre-recorded. Those that are part of like a big host agency, you know, we're partners with a lot of them, both of us. So you can always reach out to us individually to set those up. We also have ongoing trainings, you know, set up with them in marketing. You know, so we do have marketing funds available on a large case like that, but not on an individual case because it really requires contracting with us, with Allianz. It's contracting being signed, and a lot of the big agencies out there have, and they're signed with us. So we have marketing funds that we apply towards trainings. But I could always jump on an individual training at any time if somebody has a need, you know, individual or they have a team of, you know, advisors that work underneath them. By all means, they could reach out. I think you're going to put our contact information up there, Stephen.
Absolutely.
You know, later on, but you know, the important thing is it's that, you know, at the end of the day, it's don't be afraid to offer travel protection. You know, you should be afraid not to offer it because if you're not offering it, you're not doing justice for your client, and you're really putting yourself in harm's way if something does go wrong. So don't be, you know, like Carlos said, it doesn't. There's no risk in offering anything. If they, you know, maybe they say yes or no, but if they're going to say no to you, make sure you get some kind of waiver in place, a signed waiver of acknowledgement that you at least offered it to them. Okay,
Okay,
because
the
that's
other
going to
thing to
help you.
add on to that is remember one of the primary tools, and it's sales techniques. Kathy, you had asked about that, is you don't sell out of your own pocket, right? So one thing that you should do, both Tim and I, we have various plans. Some of them are higher end than others. Start out with the one that has truly comprehensive coverage. The one that is, you know, in our case, not necessarily the most powerful, but the real strong one. In our case, it's our classic. Okay. You want to start with that as your first offer. And if they resist because of price, now you can always offer them something that has less coverage. That does a couple of things. One, you're not leaving money on the table. Two, if something should happen, God forbid, that lower end plan doesn't cover that the higher end would have covered, the choice wasn't yours. The choice was theirs, and it's clearly documented that they chose to go with the lesser coverage. So you're relieved of any responsibility. Both of us have in the past, and I'm sure we still have it available. It used to be more common when the person would come and sit in front of you at a desk. We have waivers where it says, I've offered you travel protection. You've chosen not to take it. You're relieving me of the responsibility. Listen, there are those types of people out there that will be the first time that they will actually pay attention to anything you said about travel protection. And all of a sudden, they're going to want you to repeat everything because they're like, oh, so it's important. Okay, tell
Yeah.
me again.
Yeah. Yeah, in regards to that waiver, you know, back in the day, and I think a lot of us have been in the industry for quite some time. There was an agency that we worked with when documents were mail delivered, they had to hire couriers to deliver out. And this guy had this big stamp in red letters and he stamps it right on the you know the collection of invoices that he's sending over to his client, travel documents, insurance declined. And he would get his customers calling him back, said, what does this mean? How do I get that off? It's like, well, you listen to the presentation that we're trying to offer you the travel protection, and you agree to take it, or you tell us you don't want it. You know, so well, you'll give it to me. You give it to me. They don't want to see that. You know, now that they know the onus is on themselves, they cannot blame the travel advisor any longer if a loss occurs. They want to now sit up, pay attention. It's like, well, of course I want that. But it's like, okay, well, why didn't you take it the first time? You know, so, but it's very important that you have an acknowledgement that you know, the policy was offered to every client, no matter
I
young or old,
agree.
no
I
matter young or old.
100% agree in that one, Tim and Carlos. That I actually do that myself in terms of like, you know, when you're ready to go and request for credit card authorization, I'm like, there's a little bit of waiver. I think all travel advisors should have that where they can actually click, sign, acknowledge that
Yeah.
you offer the travel protection.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I will even say,
One other
taking
thing
it
that,
to
yeah,
one
was,
other step is you guys have amazing technologies nowadays that you guys can actually get quotes sent right out from your systems. They
yeah.
can track it. We can see if people have accepted it, declined it, purchased it, whatever the heck that needs to look like. So you
Yeah.
guys make our lives a heck of a lot easier too.
Yeah, well, yeah, we try our best, Stephen. And like Carlos mentioned, you don't have to pick the product that you think is best for your client, but most clients will accept the advisor's recommendation. But we have a recommendation engine that you can send a quote out with 3 different products and let them pick it. Let them, like Carlos said, let them pick what they think is best for them. And then you book it. Then again, it's on them if they pick the cheapest thing out there, because you could always buy cheaper, but what do you want out of the plan? At the end of the day, you hope you don't have to use the plan. You don't have to you don't have to activate it, because that means something bad happened, right? But it's
Absolutely.
darn good to have when you need it, right? To have it, and you hope you don't have to use it. But we're going to be there for you when you do.
100%. We appreciate that.
Case, we actually use what we call a smart quote. So if you want, and because we work with more than one insurance company known as carriers, thank you, Tim.
Carriers, yeah.
And there are different products. We don't allow you to quote both of the from different insurance companies at the same time. But if you're working with our US Fire product, which is basic, classic, and classic with cancel for any reason, the way our system works is if you want someone to see all 3, you would send them a basic quote. But if you send them a classic quote, we won't show them basic because we don't want them dumbing down just on price.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll show them the classic. If they're still within the 21-day time sensitive window for cancel for any reason, we'll show them classic with cancel for any reason. But we don't push it down, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that totally makes sense. And I would say too, I mean, I know everybody has different policies, basic on up to deluxe and premiums and all that stuff. Guys, I would highly recommend, these guys are the experts here. When you get a chance, reach out to them. We're going to post their emails for Tim. If you want to reach out to him, it's just tim.behm@Allianz, ALLIANZ.com. And for Carlos, it is Carlos, CARLOS, at TravelSafe, TravelSafe.com. And guys, reach out to these people, ask them about their cancel for any reason policies, their look back periods, their time sensitive reasons. I know we didn't get into policy specific. We really just wanted to give you guys an overall kind of education and synopsis of travel protection and insurance to hopefully make it easier for you guys to include those policies as an additional component in every one of your trips moving forward. So Tim, Carlos, thank you guys both very much for all of this amazing information. And Kathy, great as always.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Yeah, we appreciate it.
Real quick, I saw a question from Linda. Linda, there is always an argument to be had. There is no trip that you can't offer one of our products on. Yes, we can cover. I mentioned my daughter with the $500 bill. That was a $20 policy bought the day before we departed.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. You could buy it all the way up. Most of our plans you buy up to the day prior to departure. But what we define as a trip is going to a destination more than 100 miles from home. I think we both define that the same. We're not a health medical insurance company. So you can't say to government, hey, listen, I bought this annual plan from Allianz. Here's my medical insurance proof. No, that's not the way it works. We're travel insurance companies with a medical benefit. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you guys again so much. You've been awesome. And we look forward to chatting with you guys again soon.